Hey, good to see you. So, something big just happened that a lot of people are talking about, especially if you're on Social Security, know someone who is, or you just care about how your taxes are being used. President Trump has just signed a new executive memorandum that changes how the government handles Social Security benefits, and it's causing a lot of debate. Now, what makes this important isn't just the politics behind it, but how it could affect millions of people across the country. There's a lot to talk about here: fraud, immigration, identity checks, and even questions about how safe the system really is. And there's one detail most people might not know. This order brings back a penalty that hasn't been used in years, up to $10,000 if someone's caught filing a fake claim. That's not small change. So if you or someone you know relies on Social Security or just wants to better understand what's going on, this is something worth paying attention to. Stick around, because understanding what's really happening here can help you protect yourself, your family, and your future. And by the way, if you find value in thoughtful conversations like this one, go ahead and hit subscribe. That way, you'll never miss an update that could help you or someone you care about. So let's start with what this executive memorandum actually is. On April 15th, 2025, President Trump signed a memorandum that focuses on one thing: making it harder for people who aren't legally in the U.S. to get Social Security benefits, and at the same time, cracking down on fraud within the system. Now, on paper, that might sound pretty straightforward. Most people would agree that fraud is bad, right? Nobody wants their hard-earned tax dollars going to someone who lied to get them. But once you start looking at the details, things get a little more complicated. One of the main things the memorandum does is direct the Social Security Administration to work more closely with the Department of Justice and the Office of the Inspector General. So, what does that mean for regular folks? Well, for one, the SSA is now going to expand its fraud prosecution teams to at least 50 different U.S. attorneys' offices. That's a pretty big expansion. And next, they're also setting up new units to go after Medicare and Medicaid fraud in 15 more locations across the country. The idea here is to give federal attorneys more tools to go after what the administration sees as widespread abuse. But here's where things start to get a little more eye-opening. One of the more unique parts of the order is something called the Are You Alive project. It sounds like something out of a sci-fi show, but it's actually a real government program now. Basically, it tells officials to look into people on the Social Security rolls who are over 100 years old, especially if their earnings records don't match up with typical wage data. Now, you might be wondering why that matters. Well, the government believes that some of these accounts are being used for identity theft. They're not necessarily saying these folks are committing fraud themselves. Sometimes someone else may be using their Social Security number. But the fact that this is now a federal priority shows how seriously the administration is taking this issue. And speaking of taking things seriously, another change is that the government is bringing back civil fines, up to $10,000 for anyone found guilty of filing a fraudulent claim. This penalty had kind of fallen off the radar in recent years, but the new memorandum brings it back. That's a big stick to swing, and the hope is that it'll scare off people who might be tempted to cheat the system. Now, all of this is being framed as a way to protect the integrity of Social Security, which, honestly, is something most people want. But, and this is important, there's another side to the story. A big part of the rationale behind this memorandum is the belief that undocumented immigrants are costing the system money by collecting benefits they're not supposed to get. Supporters of the memorandum point to numbers from an organization called FAIR, the Federation for American Immigration Reform, which claims undocumented immigrants and their children cost U.S. taxpayers around $182 billion a year. That includes both federal and state spending. And according to FAIR, close to 1 million undocumented immigrants are using fake or stolen Social Security numbers to work and maybe even claim benefits. That's what the administration is trying to stop. But here's where it gets tricky. Critics are quick to point out that most undocumented immigrants don't actually receive benefits. In fact, many of them pay into the system through payroll taxes and never get anything back. The Social Security Administration itself says less than 1% of all benefits are paid out improperly. So then, why all this focus on fraud? Is it really as widespread as it's being made out to be? Or is this more about politics than policy? You see, this memo also comes at a time when the U.S. is still debating how to handle immigration. Under President Biden, over 2 million undocumented immigrants were assigned Social Security numbers in just one fiscal year. That number includes people with different legal statuses, like asylum seekers or those under deferred action. But for Trump's team, it's more evidence of what they call lax oversight. And during Biden's presidency, there were even efforts to expand access to health care for undocumented immigrants, including extending some Medicaid services and pushing to include more people in the Affordable Care Act. Those moves were stopped in court, but they left a big impression. Trump's administration is using those examples to draw a clear line between their policies and the ones before them. So then what does this mean for you? If you're a citizen or lawful resident who's paid into the system your whole life, you might feel reassured knowing that the government is taking fraud seriously. But if you're someone who's worried about how policies like this could impact vulnerable communities, especially those who already struggle to navigate complex government systems, this might raise some red flags. Now, beyond the politics, there are also practical concerns. Some legal experts have warned that focusing too much on immigration might distract from other problems inside the Social Security Administration. Things like outdated technology, staff shortages, and a growing backlog of cases can cause just as much harm to people trying to get their rightful benefits. There's also concern about privacy. With new enforcement efforts, some worry that automated systems could start flagging legitimate recipients by mistake. The "Are you alive?" checks might sound clever, but what if someone's account gets frozen just because of a computer error? That's a very real fear for people living on fixed incomes who rely on these benefits to get through the month. And on top of that, there's the issue of fairness. Is a $10,000 fine really the best way to deal with people who might have made a mistake or who didn't understand how the process works? That's something we'll likely hear more about as these policies start to roll out. Also, it's worth remembering that Social Security was never meant to be a political football. When it was created back in 1935, it was designed to be a safety net for older Americans, the disabled, and others in need. Over the years, it expanded to include more programs like Medicare and Medicaid, but the core idea stayed the same: help people when they need it most. And now, nearly a century later, it's a system under pressure. People are living longer. Just pausing for a moment to share something important with you. Medicare can be confusing, and we've spent a lot of time looking for a partner we could genuinely trust. We've partnered with Chapter, a service we feel confident recommending for clear, honest help with Medicare. Chapter connects you with a licensed advisor who takes the time to understand your needs, whether it's your doctors, your prescriptions, or just making sure your plan fits your lifestyle. They help you compare all the Medicare plans available in your area, and their goal is simple: maximize your savings and minimize the hassle. Most people who use Chapter save around $1,100 a year. It's completely free, and once you're set up, you'll also have access to their care advocate team. Real people who stick with you to help with claims, plan changes, or anything that comes up down the road. If you'd like to speak with someone today, call 615-639-1937 or visit askchapter.org/money by clicking the link in the comment section below. All right, let's keep going. Healthcare costs are going up. And yes, there's fraud, but there's also a massive number of honest people who depend on these checks to stay afloat. So this executive memorandum, while it might seem like just another headline, actually fits into a much bigger conversation about what kind of country we want to be. Do we focus more on cutting waste, or do we invest more in access? Do we crack down harder on enforcement, or do we focus on fixing the system's infrastructure? Whatever your answer, it's clear that this issue touches a nerve for a lot of people. Whether you're a retiree, someone taking care of aging parents, or just a concerned taxpayer, this matters. These kinds of changes shape not only policy, but also how people feel about fairness, security, and trust in government. And that's why it's so important to stay informed, not just about what's happening, but why it's happening. It helps you ask better questions, hold leaders accountable, and maybe even have more meaningful conversations with the people around you. So then, what do you think? Do you feel this executive memorandum will actually reduce fraud? Or do you worry that it might create more problems than it solves? Let me know in the comments. I always appreciate hearing your thoughts and stories, especially from those of you directly affected. If you found this helpful, don't forget to like and subscribe. It helps the channel grow and makes sure these kinds of discussions stay part of the conversation. Thanks for spending some time with me today, and I'll see you again soon.